Unpopular opinion alert, like very unpopular. I'm about to put my stake in the ground and say something that I'm probably going to get some backlash over, but everybody's welcome here. And this is a safe space. And I love you no matter which editing software you use. But I prefer Photoshop over Lightroom. I know. Every photographer, if you're watching this and you are a professional photographer, or even if this is a side hustle, you're probably like, you are crazy. Because I know I've done a poll on Instagram. I've asked around. I have a lot of professional photographer friends, and everyone uses Lightroom. But I personally like to use Photoshop, and today I'm going to discuss why that is. I'm happy for you no matter what you use, by the way. Like, you can use whatever makes your heart soar, but I'm going to give my unpopular opinion today of why I use Photoshop over Lightroom. If we haven't met yet, hi, I'm Kayla Brent. I'm a motherhood photographer and founder of Mom Photography School, where I teach moms how to take gorgeous everyday photos of their family. And I also have a course that's called Editing Essentials that teaches Photoshop, of course. And in there, I have a whole lesson that is pretty much what I'm going to be giving you today that's about why I choose Photoshop over Lightroom. I want to preface with this. Lightroom is an amazing tool. There are amazing photographers who use it. I'm not saying Lightroom is bad. Lightroom is fantastic. I'm saying that I personally like Photoshop. And it's not that I don't know how to use Lightroom. I do know how to use Lightroom. I jumped on the bandwagon. I used Photoshop because that was all there was. And then Lightroom came out. Everybody was using Lightroom. I said, I've got to learn this too. I did. But the problem was I found myself using Lightroom, but then having to throw my images into Photoshop to make edits that I wanted to make and that I couldn't do in Lightroom. So I was using two programs when I could just be using one, Photoshop, because almost everything I was going to say everything that Lightroom can do, Photoshop can do, plus a whole lot more. But I'm sure there's somebody's going to say, oh, you can't do this in Photoshop. I'm sure there's something, but most everything that you can do in Lightroom can be done in Photoshop. There has been nothing that I've encountered that I couldn't do that I had to open up Lightroom for, but the reverse happened a lot. So I'm going to go into the things that I personally like with Photoshop. And one of them has to do with raw images, Adobe Camera Raw. It's a plugin that's automatically with Photoshop. If you don't know anything about Raw and you want to learn more about it, I have a video for you. I'll link that below. Another thing that I love about Photoshop that Lightroom doesn't have are the layers, and then the tools, of course, the Photoshop tools. So I'll be diving into that now. If you are new here, please like this video and subscribe so you can get more of the editing and the mom hacks and mom tips and all the photo tips. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. So let's go ahead and dive into the first thing that I love about Photoshop. And it has to do with what's called Adobe Camera Raw. I shoot in RAW. And if you're not familiar with RAW, again, I have a video on that, RAW versus JPEG, and I explain that. But RAW is essentially, it's a big, huge file. It's massive. And you have to process a raw image before you can use it, unlike a JPEG. Like, you could take the SD card and go to a grocery store and print photos, JPEG images off the SD card. You can't do anything with a raw image off the SD card until you process it. So you can't print it, you can't text it, you can't do anything, and the other person be able to open it until you open it up and save it as a different kind of file. Most popular is JPEG. So not to get too technical there, but the big thing here is when you open up a raw file in Photoshop, it opens up in what's called Adobe Camera Raw. And it's like this whole pop-up, and I'm gonna show you what it looks like. And it is fantastic. And I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and show you exactly what it looks like until you can see why I like it. So here we go, share screen. Okay, so here I am in Photoshop. This is a precious family that I took pictures of, and there is a couple images of my boys here. And what I'm going to do is I have the image, it's actually this one here, but I'm going to drag one that's not edited. And this is an ARW, which is Sony's version of the raw file. I'm going to drag it into Photoshop. And here's what happens. It opens up in, well, y'all can't see that because let me open up my desktop so you can see all of it. There we go. Now this is right here is Adobe Camera Raw, and this is what it looks like, and this is what it always looks like when you drag any raw files, whether it be one or many, in here. Now what you can do here is you can edit the file right here in Adobe Camera Raw without actually having it into Photoshop itself. And I love this because for this image here, this is what it looked like before. And now I'm going to make like some light edits, which is typically what I use. That is my style, typically very timeless. I do a little bit here and there, mainly messing with the white balance, the exposure, those kinds of things. And then from here, I can just touch this and I can save it and never have to do anything, go into Photoshop, and then my raw files are converted in JPEG and I can share them, I can do it, print them, whatever I want to do with them. So that's my big thing about Photoshop I love. And this, if you're a Lightroom user, this probably looks familiar to you. This looks like and feels a lot like Lightroom. It even has some of the same tools over here that are a lot like Lightroom. So you can crop images. It has the spot removal tool. So Adobe Camera Raw, for me, it feels a whole lot like Lightroom. There you go. Why would I do this in Lightroom when I might need Photoshop? And you're like, well, what's an example, Kayla, of you wanting something in Photoshop? Okay, well, let's go ahead and open up this image of something that I might need to do in Photoshop. So here we are, we're in Photoshop now. I'm going to make this bigger. And this image doesn't have a whole lot of problems, but usually images have a whole lot of problems when you're taking pictures of kids, or mine personally. They will have a bruise on their face or a cut or something, and I'm going to need to edit something out like that. And I want to have full control. So Photoshop has all the tools I need to do that. And that's what I love. Well, of course, this image doesn't have a whole lot of that because we're not looking at the camera. But let's say this here, I just did not want that on there. I have so many tool options to get rid of that. And I'm going to see which one I can just take this here. We'll see. And boom. How easy was that? I mean, that took me 2 clicks. Literally, I'm done. I can save it. And I was able to do that. If that was something that was really, really bothering me and I needed the logo gone, if this snow here was actually, it was distracting or something that I wanted to be gone, I could easily remove it in 2 clicks. No big deal. So those kinds of things, that's what I can do. That's the power of Photoshop. I can do it all in one place, save it, and be done. Another thing that I love about Photoshop that you do not have in Lightroom is the ability to do layers. So pretty much whenever you are editing in Lightroom, you pretty much have what you have, like you were editing one thing. With Photoshop, you can make layers. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this background. I just took the background, I drug it to the little plus sign, and I copied that. And what can happen is I can be editing away and doing whatever. I'm getting rid of snowflakes. Well, I didn't do a very good job on that one. I can get rid of snowflakes. You can do whatever you want to do. And then you can say to go back. And you can go back and forth by hitting this eye, and you can see what you're doing and how it's looking. So if I was distracted by that snowflake there, I can also, but I want it. I mean, it's snow. Why not? I can take this as 100%. I can lower the opacity so it's there, but it's not quite as distracting. Those kinds of things. Here's another thing that can be done. I can take this whole background if I wanted to, and I can remove it. I'm just going to do this a simple way. There's a ton of ways that you can remove like these trees in the background. I'm going to take the eyedropper tool and choose that color of the background, and I'm just going to make it bigger, and I'm going to go over it. Well, right now it's just doing a little bit because remember our opacity was 52 on this. I got to turn it up. And I can go in here and get rid of the background. And as I'm doing this, again, I am not doing this how I would probably typically do this. I would not even be removing the trees in normal circumstances, but I can go back and look before and after, and I can make changes. I can decide not to use that. I can, it's not destructive. I always have my original back there, and that's nice. And I can also lower the opacity so it looks more foggy or whatnot. Like, that's a cool look. The possibilities are absolutely endless in Photoshop, and that is another reason that I just love it. So there you have it. That is why I choose to use Photoshop over Lightroom. So comment below, tell me, which one do you use? Literally all my friends use Lightroom, and their work is absolutely phenomenal. Their edits are absolutely phenomenal. But as a mother and as somebody who teaches moms how to use a camera and to edit and do all the things, this Photoshop is the quickest and the easiest to fix those things that we typically deal with, like bumps and bruises and those kinds of things. There are tools in Lightroom that can do it, but I like to have options, and Photoshop has all the options. In my course, Editing Essentials, I go into how I have a whole lesson, and you follow along with me, of how to remove bumps and bruises and blemishes. And check that out below. I will link that. I also have the other videos about RAW versus JPEG linked below as well. So go check out those videos. If you haven't already, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I will see you all next time. Bye, y'all.